Hello and welcome to another episode in my Ultraschall 5 tutorial series. My name is Joram. Today I want to show you how you can turn the recording that you edited and mastered and added metadata to it and export it so it's ready for publication. First up, I will show you the quick way, what you want to do sort of in 90% of the cases, the quick and safe way to export your files. If you click on the render file dialog box in the bottom left, you get this dialog here, and you have to only look, although you have a lot of settings here, there's only very few that you have to take care of or that you have to care about. The first one is the file name. I also usually leave that as my project title, so whatever your project is called, you also see that here represented in the file name. But if you want to change that, you can change that here. The next thing I usually do is I change my channels from stereo to mono, because podcast files are best consumed in mono, in my opinion. It makes for smaller file sizes, and many people listen to only like one earbud and stuff like that. And then if you make any sort of stereo mixing where one person is more on the left and one person is more on the right, it will annoy people. So just don't do that. Just export everything in mono and not in stereo. And finally, I changed the bitrate to 112 kilobits per second just to make the file size a little bit smaller. It's absolutely fine for voice audio. And then you have smaller file sizes, less traffic on your servers, less traffic for your listeners. And that's already it. You don't have to do any more settings here. You can simply press render to file. In my case, I already have the file, and I can tell it to overwrite it, and then it will render it out again. And depending on your machine and your project length, it will take some amount of time, maybe 2 or 3 minutes if you have a very long project and a very slow computer like mine. So that's it for the simple export for your MP3, for your podcast. If you're only interested in that, this is the point to stop. If you want to know a little bit more about the details of this export functionality and some clever tricks, just stay with me for a few more minutes. So if we open this up again, we can select a couple of different presets. If you use tools, for example, like Auphonic, you can export everything already prepared for Auphonic. I will do a different video on Auphonic in the future. Just so much right now, this is a really cool tool to very simply do mastering and like audio correction for all kinds of smaller mistakes you might have in your recording. And this is a one-click solution. You drop your files in there. But what you want to drop in there are the individual stems, not the master mix of your file. So you don't want everything mixed together in one file. You want to have the individual tracks as individual files. And this is what this preset does. It also changes the file name structure to be the project title, the track number, and then the track name for easier identification. And it also exports it as a FLAC file and not as an MP3. So if this is your use case, you can simply use the preset and export it like that. And then you get all of your individual tracks exported. If you want to do other things, you can just go in the source menu. You can also export the master mix and the individual tracks if you want to sort of have a fixed product, but also have the individual tracks for later editing maybe saved, and all sorts of other things. I like to do, for example, the region render matrix, and this is a cool feature that I want to show you now. Here you can create regions if you select, for example, an area that you want to export, and then you press Shift R and you create a region. You can edit that region and give it a name. For example, export 1. And then if you go into your region and marker manager, here you have your markers and you also have your region that's marked here. Then you click on render matrix, and then you end up with this little fella here, and it's a matrix where you select what you want to render. If you press all tracks, you can render all the individual tracks. You can also just export a master mix, and then only this section is rendered. So you might ask yourself, when is this useful? This is useful when you want to, for example, export snippets for social media or snippets to use in other projects. For example, you do a long interview with someone and you will have some quotes that you want to export individually. You mark these quotes in your editor as a region, and then you export all of your quotes at once, and then you have them ready. And then you can do whatever you want with them. And this is what you do with the region render matrix, and then you can either just select a couple of regions or use all project regions and export those. What you can also do is, when we go back to master mix, we can just export a time selection. This is sort of the simpler version of the regions. You just select a part that you care about, and then you export it as just this time selection. Then for the other settings here, you can go wild on your own sort of preferences. I usually use MP3, but just as a side note, you can even export MP4 video with Reaper. I personally haven't done it, but I know that other people are sometimes doing that. For YouTube, for example, they just drop sort of a standard still image in there, or a very simple moving video file that they created elsewhere. They drop that in Reaper, then they export this as an MP4, and then they can upload it to YouTube. I've never done that, but I've known people who do this. And that's already it. With that, you can have a wide array of options to export your projects from Ultraschall, and you can really pick and choose the settings and the things that you need to suit whatever sort of downstream workflow you have. Thank you for watching. If you like this, leave a comment, and if you have any questions, do that as well. If you want to see more stuff like this, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks again, and goodbye.